On the stroke of midnight on August 15, 1947, India emerged from nearly 2 centuries of British colonial rule as a free nation, but one scarred by partition, communal violence, and economic devastation. The British had drained India's wealth, reducing its share of global GDP from around 25% in the 1700s to a mere 3 to 4% by independence, leaving behind a country with 80% poverty, 12% literacy, a life expectancy of 32 years, and a per capita income of just $150. Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, famously spoke of a tryst with destiny, but the reality for the people was one of rebuilding amid famine, refugee crises, over 14 million displaced, and the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi in 1948. From the perspective of ordinary Indians, farmers, laborers, and the urban poor, this era was defined by survival and hope, as the new republic adopted a socialist-inspired mixed economy, focusing on self-reliance through 5-year plans and public sector industries. Let's check out India's The Formative Years, Nation Building Amid Struggles, 1947 to 1990. In the initial decades, India's people grappled with immense challenges. The 1950 Constitution established a democratic republic, enshrining fundamental rights and universal suffrage, a bold move for a nation of 340 million, making it the world's largest democracy. However, economic growth was sluggish under Nehru's import substitution model, with per capita GDP falling from 18% of the world average in 1950 to just 6% by 1991 due to bureaucratic red tape, known as the License Raj. Wars with China, 1962, and Pakistan, 1948, 1965, 1971, the latter creating Bangladesh, strained resources, while internal issues like corruption, caste discrimination, and gender inequality persisted. The 1975 emergency under Indira Gandhi suspended civil liberties, leading to forced sterilizations and media censorship, eroding public trust in institutions. Yet there were triumphs that lifted the spirits of the people. The Green Revolution in the 1960s, spearheaded by leaders like Lal Bahadur Shastri and scientists like M.S. Swaminathan, transformed India from a food-scarce nation reliant on U.S. aid, PL480 wheat shipments, to a self-sufficient agricultural powerhouse, averting famines and boosting rural incomes. Literacy rose gradually, health initiatives like smallpox eradication succeeded, and institutions such as IITs and IIMs laid the foundation for a skilled workforce. For many Indians, this period symbolized resilience, from the horrors of partition riots that killed over 1 million, to the pride in nuclear tests at Pokhran in 1974, affirming technological sovereignty. Globally, India was seen as a leader of the non-aligned movement, advocating for the global South during the Cold War, earning respect from newly decolonized nations in Africa and Asia for its anti-imperialist stance. However, Western perceptions often highlighted India's poverty and overpopulation, with critics like Winston Churchill dismissing it as a beastly people with a beastly religion, a colonial hangover that lingered. Positive views came from the Soviet Union, which provided aid and defense ties, viewing India as a counterweight to China and the US. The bads were evident. Economic stagnation led to a balance of payments crisis by 1991, with foreign reserves barely covering 2 weeks of imports. Socially, untouchability, child marriage, and regional insurgencies, e.g., in Punjab and Kashmir, scarred society, while women's rights advanced slowly with laws like the Hindu Code Bill, but faced cultural resistance. Now coming into the turning point, liberalization and economic awakening, 1991 to 2010. The 1991 economic crisis forced Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and Finance Minister Manmohan Singh to dismantle the License Raj, opening India to foreign investment, privatization, and globalization. This V-shaped recovery, as some describe it, reversed decades of relative decline. Per capita GDP climbed back to 18% of the world average by the 2010s. For the people, this meant booming opportunities. The IT revolution turned cities like Bangalore into Silicon Valleys, creating millions of jobs and a burgeoning middle class of over 300 million. Poverty dropped from 45% in 1993 to 22% by 2011. Life expectancy rose to 67, and literacy hit 100%, 74%. Social programs like MNREGA 2005 provided rural employment, while the Right to Education Act 2009 aimed at universal schooling. But still, challenges persisted. The 2002 Gujarat riots exposed communal tensions, corruption scandals, example 2G spectrum, fueled public anger, leading to the 2011 anti-corruption movement, and inequality widened, with urban-rural divides deepening. Globally, India's image shifted positively. The 1998 nuclear tests asserted military strength, while economic growth, averaging 7% annually, positioned it as an emerging market darling. The US viewed India as a strategic partner against China, culminating in the 2008 civil nuclear deal. However, criticisms mounted on human rights, e.g., Kashmir issues, and environmental laggardness, with Western media often portraying India as chaotic and corrupt. How does the modern era look? A digital leap and global ambitions, 2011 to 2025. Under Narendra Modi's leadership since 2014, India accelerated its transformation. The economy grew from $2 trillion in 2014 to 3.5 to 4.2 trillion by 2017-2025, making it the world's fourth largest, driven by initiatives like Make in India, Digital India, and GST 2017. For the people, this meant unprecedented connectivity. Over 800 million internet users, UPI revolutionizing payments, and schemes like Ayushman Bharat providing health insurance to 500 million poor. Poverty fell below 10%. Women's workforce participation rose with programs like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and space milestones like Chandrayaan-3, 2023, inspired national pride. The COVID-19 pandemic tested resilience, with India vaccinating over 1 billion and exporting vaccines globally, but it also exposed healthcare gaps and migrant worker hardships. But still, socially, inequalities remain. Farmer protests, 2020 to 21, caste-based reservations debates, and rising Islamophobia have divided society. Corruption perceptions improved, but press freedom rankings slipped, drawing domestic criticism. Projections see India as a $23 to $35 trillion economy by 2047, a high-income nation. From other countries' lenses in 2025, positives include India's economic dynamism, top in venture capital, domestic market scale, innovation, global innovation index strengths, and diplomatic assertiveness, G20 presidency 2023 Quad membership. A Pew survey shows 47% favorable views across 24 nations, praising its democracy and tech prowess. China sees India as a rival, but engages economically. Russia values defense ties. The EU and US hail its growth, but urge reforms. What are the negatives? 38% unfavorable in the same survey, citing persistent poverty, despite reductions, weak infrastructure, high inflation, and systemic issues like low workforce participation and AI talent shortages. Foreign policy is critiqued for capacity limits and demagoguery, with outlets like Al Jazeera noting diplomatic weaknesses in handling neighbors like Pakistan. Environmental concerns, coal reliance, and human rights minority treatment draw ire from the West. In essence, India's story is one of phoenix-like rise, from colonial ruins to a vibrant, if imperfect, giant. For its 1.4 billion people, it's a narrative of progress tempered by inequities, globally a beacon of possibility amid critiques. As 2047 approaches, the centenary of independence, India stands poised, embodying unity in diversity and innovation through adversity.